So bobbin lace is a traditional craft that consists in hand-making pieces of lace. This technique contributed to the international reputation of the European craft from the 17th century until the 19th century. And from then on, its know-how ceases to be taught and gradually fell asleep. Nowadays in France, there is one remaining institution employing professional lace maker. It's the Mobilier National. 8 lace makers are working full-time in the Atelier Conservatoire National de la Dentelle du Puy-en-Velay to promote and to protect this craft. They create laces based on contemporary work of art, which adorn French palaces and embassies. The workshop policy is to consider lace as a medium for contemporary art only. They stand by the idea that lace can no longer exist for another field than art. In addition to this unique place in France, there are several lace associations, so this craft remains largely in the hand of enthusiasts working within local association. They do lace for fun, as a hobby, because they love practicing bobbin lace, and most of their laces end up in well-classified binders or are framed as if they were precious pictures. So to recap, today in France, bobbin lace is a professional activity for 8 lace makers, and the National Institute for French Craft count that there is 450 local lace associations, so that represents thousands of enthusiasts. Therefore, bobbin lace seems destined to exist solely for artistic purposes or as a hobby. But as designers, we wonder how to reintegrate bobbin lace practice into its original field, namely clothing and fashion. Although in the 1990s, a few fashion designers called on the services of lace makers, these initiatives are rare. The most famous one is the collaboration between the Hôtel de la Dentelle de Brioude and Oscar de la Renta for Balmain in 1996. Please remember this course setup for later on. And now we're going to try to understand why bobbin lace is not a fashion craft anymore. So first, we need to understand how heavy is the weight of heritage and how conservatism limits bobbin lace practice. We believe one of the reasons why bobbin lace is removed from fashion and textile workshops is because it is surrounded by too many interdictions for it to be seen as a playground for designers. Lots of experimentation are forbidden to creators willing to have fun with bobbin lace. First of them is mixing techniques, seen almost like craft heresy. For example, the Dutch designer and lace maker Viva van der Wolf, which I advise all of you to check her work because she's doing an incredible textile work. She's being told by your local lace guild that her laces are not real laces because she mixes bobbin lace with other techniques, such as macrame, bead work, or other passementerie craft. They stand by the idea that real lace doesn't need other technique to be interesting and beautiful, and that real lace should only be bobbin lace. Second obstacle is the use of color, which is a big subject of debate within the lace community. Real and valuable lace must be white. Most of the pattern books published nowadays are still showing white laces as if it was the only color worthy enough to suit bobbin lace. I interviewed lace makers from an association based in Toulouse in the south of France, and they told me that it was a shame to use colors in bobbin lace as it was distracting from the beauty of the pattern and the complexity of the stitches. And in all the lace classes I've took in different cities in France, all the training exercises are done with white threads. So even the beginning of the learning process sticks to the chromatic tradition. But interestingly, within the same hobby groups that are teaching me, there are lace makers involving bright color in their project. I've been to several lace exhibitions and I mostly saw colored work. Talking with some of the lace makers, they told me that the use of colors was what makes their production contemporary and that they were bored of always seeing white laces. They really express a will to renew bobbin lace practice, and they break free from tradition by using different color. But still, their laces are not recognized as textile creation by the purist, but as creative games done by senior women. The Atelier National uses color, but in much more controlled way. The laces they are realizing are a reproduction of actual artworks. So they they stick to the colors of the original pieces that they are interpreting. They are not the one choosing the colors. And thirdly, the last obstacle I've observed is the myth about designing pattern as if it was an untouchable skill. To make bobbin lace, you need a diagram, which is the pattern to follow that indicated where all the threads are going, the way in which they make up the lace. And either within association or in the Mobilier National, technical drawing is said to be an impossible skill to master without years of training. Some say you need 5, 6, or even 7 years of training in order to be able to create your own pattern. Therefore, lace beginners are doomed to play with existing pattern, and textile designers are discouraged to try without having taken years of several courses. So this re-highlight shows how much bobbin lace is protected. Even though lace skills are in danger, they are subject to strict control with a ban on appropriating technique and developing them further. As if the technique had reached an unrivaled ideal perfection, preventing it from evolving. Enthusiasts are so protective of the traditional techniques that they are really obstacles to its renewal. Talking with Bruno Itier, which is who is a lace historian and the former director of the Musée des Manufactures de Dentelle de Rhotournac, he told me that he regrets that lace is surrounded by so many presuppositions that destabilize young enthusiasts. He also points out the shared rule about what must be done. For example, this kind of specific short brass pins for this kind of Belgian lace, or this specific type of narrow bobbins for this specific type of lace from Normandy. So otherwise, if you're not using this tool for this lace, you are not making real lace. You do not see bead embroidery or weaving or knitting being so restrictive. Many workshops are experimenting with new materials, playing with technology, just having fun with the technique. And what do they have in common? They still exist in fashion craft workshops. So now let's take a moment to understand the main reason why bobbin lace is not part of the textile craft industry. Bruno Itier believes that the time required to produce lace is the major obstacle. And as you saw me making lace earlier, everybody was asking me how long it takes. Bruno Itier claims that to imagine developing bobbin lace for fashion, lace makers need to find fashion designers who are particularly lace aware. And the National Institute for French Craft also emphasizes the time required by lace as the major reason why it can only be a hobby. They say there are very few prospects for handmade lace as it takes many hours of work to make it. You remember this corset top we saw previously. This piece of lace was done by Odette Harpin, a well-known French figure who promoted bobbin lace last century, and the lace was executed by 4 high-skilled lace makers. It required 150 hours of pattern making and 96,000 hours of lace making. So let's realize how much this is. This amount of hours represents 400 days, so more than 57 weeks, so more than 13 months, so more than a year. But considering a lace maker is working 35 hours a week, it took 275 weeks to produce the lace, so more than 63 months, so 5 years. Half a decade for a single corset top. But there were 4 working at the same time, so let's say it took them 16 months of simultaneous work to create this piece of fashion. Here we reach the point where we understand Bruno Itier and the National Institute for French Craft. They're right, bobbin lace is incredibly time-consuming, and such delay seems incompatible with today's fashion production rhythm. But fashion journalists love to put the hours needed for haute couture piece in the spotlight. In several articles, you can see that it's important for them to highlight the number of hours it takes to create a piece, and these numbers are precious for us because they allow us to compare the production time for those bobbin lace. Take a look at these examples. For the Spring-Summer 2018 Haute Couture Dior collection, it took 600 hours for 5 craftspeople to make the birdcage dress. Also, in this example, for the beautiful wedding dress closure of the Chanel Fall-Winter 2014-2015 show, the journalist detailed all the numbers of hours required for every part of the outfit, for a total of 933 hours of work. This article seems to highlight garments that are taking a particularly long time to make. It is really more difficult to find numbers and to find out how long it took to make pieces that are considered more ordinary. So, for fashion journalists and for fashion brands, these numbers are impressive. So when you compare them for bobbin lace, you understand why they would no longer ask for a piece of lace requiring thousands of hours. But as bobbin lace enthusiasts, which I know we all are, we remain dissatisfied with this issue, which, as we have already seen, direct bobbin lace toward artistic and leisure practices, especially when lace still exists and is still highly desired by fashion and haute couture. So we can ask ourselves, what kind of lace is used today in fashion? Couture houses and designers are working with mechanical lace manufacture. The most famous one of them is the Saint-Etienne factory located in the north of France and producing high-quality livrées lace. All of the examples you see here are made with Saint-Etienne laces, and it's even difficult to find only 4 examples because there are so many. Every fashion house is having fun with this fabric. For almost every collection, every year, lace is still a really popular material. But the silhouettes are made with mechanical lace because it is way faster to produce. With the levers machine, they said that you can make 2 hours a meter. Meanwhile, to make the little bit that is circled, it took me 12 hours, and it's 15 centimeters. But intricate craft workshops still exist. Some textile crafts are taking a lot of time and are still called upon designers. We can think about all the bead embroiderers in France or in India, patiently sewing one bead at a time to ornate meters and meters of fabric. And we just saw that it's not uncommon for fashion houses and journalists to highlight the numbers of hours required to decorate a piece. A great example happened recently at the Met Gala that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The day after the event, Vogue entitled an article, it took 350,000 sequins to make Whoopi Goldberg's 2025 Met Gala dress. Designed by Tom Brown, the dress required 77,000 hours of hand embroidering. And the journalist emphasized the time it took to stitch all of the sequins. In a lot of different media, this outfit was presented as the one that required the most working time for this Met Gala. So this outfit is highlighted for how time-consuming it was, as if this fact was a guarantee of quality or making it an outfit that deserved more attention than the others. So in this case, the time factor adds prestige and value to the outfit. So here we have the proof that for some special occasion, fashion has the time to develop skillful projects. So why does bobbin lace seem embarrassingly time-consuming while equally time-intensive embroidery work is still commissioned? We argue that if bobbin lace is not represented among fashion crafts, it is not because it can only lay claim to contemporary art. Bobbin lace was never invented for art, was made to be used for fashion, for trimming, for adding details on an outfit. If bobbin lace is no longer a fashion craft, it might be because it is no longer part of the imagination of the collective imagination. We have to realize that handmade lace workshops closed 2 centuries ago because the first mechanical looms were born in the 1810s. So creators either consider it a dead craft or do not even remember it exists. I did an internship 2 years ago in the Saint-Etienne factory, and the artistic director was really surprised that I was doing bobbin lace. She thought nobody made it anymore as a design practice. For her, bobbin lace was now only a leisure craft practiced by elderly women. So bobbin lace, once a staple of fashion and craftsmanship, has largely fallen out of favor in today's design world. And it's an interesting destiny for such a runway-worthy craft, and especially when there are proofs that designers recognize the beauty and the quality of handmade lace. Let's have a look at Jean-Paul Gaultier Haute Couture Fall-Winter 2023-2024 collection, designed by Julien Dossiena. The designer presents a blouse made out of a patchwork of real pieces of bobbin lace, mostly with some part of needle lace and crochet. All the pieces are joined together in a symmetrical pattern, closed in the front with a buttonhole of white pearls. All the laces are in various shades of white, demonstrating a desire to show all laces as they are, reused for contemporary fashion. But bobbin lace on the runway is extremely rare. It's almost the only example I found for, I would say, this decade, but even for 2 or 3 decades. So here it demonstrates that the lace-making tradition is valued by some fashion designers who appreciate its heritage. And we can notice here that the designer chose laces that match precisely the idea of lace we all have in mind. A white-ish, doily-shaped, a doll associated with pearls and with vintage accessories. This blouse rose in favor of all the conservative enthusiasts we talked about previously. Maybe they were right, and lace should be white and traditionally made. Maybe it's the way to accessorize and present it that could make it contemporary. And maybe there is no better way to do bobbin lace than to repeat what was done before. But as designer and craftspeople, we cannot think so. We think that we need to show old laces to bring the memory of this practice back into the vocabulary of contemporary designers, and therefore, by discovering it, they can get inspired and have the idea of developing this craft for their collection. So this blouse is a relevant initiative to reactivate bobbin lace memory. To conclude, this study aims to allow lace makers to break free from tradition, because by listening to the injunction telling them to keep it as it was, they agree with the people saying bobbin lace can only survive as a hobby or as a contemporary art medium. During an internship, also I do internships all the time, at the Atelier National, the lace makers explained to me that it's because their laces are made for art projects that they can experiment, use strange material, change the scales, the shapes, and thus bring innovation to lace. But this would suggest that the art world offers more freedom and creative possibilities than design. And as designers, we cannot agree with this statement, especially when crafts are part of design practices and when design is a place of creative freedom, allowing to break rules. That does not mean forgetting about the traditional lace techniques, but finding a balance between classical training and possible creation for the future of this craft. We believe it is crucial to learn bobbin lace through classical training, as it is the best way to understand its structure and to master this complex craft. So this balance could be the key to develop bobbin lace for some of the crazy time-consuming projects of the fashion industry. And through this study, we pointed out some designers who are aware of the value of handmade lace. They tend to choose traditional way to producing it, or even real vintage pieces. It seems like there is a strong connection to the golden age of lace, and therefore lace makers should play on the attractiveness of lace heritage as a starting point for new creations. The golden age of lace and its delicate techniques need to be shown to inspire fashion designers to play with them. So, to briefly answer the question, how can we encourage fashion designers to collaborate with lace makers? We can say by talking about lace, showing it to a wide audience so people can remember this craft that is part of our culture and that deserves to shine more. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We move on the question, and then Joséphine will show you her practice. Any question?
Thank you very much, Joséphine. That was very, very interesting. Just a question: who made the blouse for Jean-Paul Gaultier? Do you know who made it?
Well, I tried to find if they hire lace makers. It doesn't seem like it. I haven't found real information, but I think they just gather vintage pieces that they found, like collecting vintage pieces.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And in my opinion, that's why the shades of white are so different, and it seems like they're just thrifted lace.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you very much. It was amazing. Yeah, I have a question regarding the women that you work with and like this notion of being very conservative with lace. From my perspective, when I work with fashion designers, there's this, I think it's a little prejudice or something, but usually they say, and sometimes it's real, that craftspeople have no taste. And the thing is that you work with people who can execute your vision. You don't have the required skill to do it yourself. It's very difficult also to have craft skilled people like at a high level inside of a fashion studio. So it requires to externalize the production process. So, but it's more on an executive level. Are the women that you work with in the association have there ever been approached by design studio, like fashion designers? How would they react? Because also it's very well commissioned. So that's the first question. Is there a desire to adapt a little bit more if there's financial compensation? And the second question I would have would be that, do you think that introducing manual and handmade lace making in high fashion can be done through little ornamentation on the garments, like for instance sleeves or tights, little details, and then progressively move to a more democratization of the craft in the industry?
Thank you for your question. For the first one, I think in my knowledge, none of the groups I've been approached by designer or by fashion people. But I think it's because they don't know they exist. If they knew, maybe they would. But also, we need to remember that all these women are past their 70s. So I'm not sure they would be okay, let's work with Jean-Paul Gaultier. I'm not sure. But I'm starting to get approached by some designer or to have some commission. And every time I talk to them about it, like, hey, I'm being asked to do this or this, they also are a bit scared of it. Like they're always saying, oh, but they're never going to have the money. They're never going to understand how long it takes. So tell them no. And there are maybe also part of the problem of why it's not a craft anymore. But I'm sure if fashion designer knew about all of these groups, they would approach them, because some of the lace makers, some groups are like really, really high skilled. I'm in a group in the north of Lyon, and one of them is 92 years old, and she's been doing lace for 70 years. And it's like her technique is incredible. And I don't understand how she hasn't been approached by someone, because she's really high skilled. So yeah, to answer briefly, it's because I don't know about them. And for the second question, which I forgot. Yeah. I think that's also the pieces that I'm starting to getting asked to do is like small ribbons, or a goldsmith from the Netherlands asked me to do a ribbon of lace, and he turned them into chokers. So these kind of small pieces, I can do it in like maybe a week or so. It's a delay that is reasonable for fashion or for a commission. So slowly, it's a way to integrate lace in more bigger order.
And just like a little bouncing back on what you said, is there any opportunity to also like showcase the lace making process, or even like the little bits of samples? I'm thinking of Première Vision, for instance, where like, you know, you pick your fabrics for collections every year and so on and so forth. Like, do you have fairs like that, or can you associate to other crafts?
I would love to see lace at Première Vision. I would love, if you have an opening, I'm here. Lace makers have these annual gatherings called couvige. It's a word from the Auvergne in France. I don't know exactly how you can translate it, but yeah, it's a festive lace maker gathering. And so I've been to several this spring, but it's like super niche events, and they don't have the light that they deserve, but it's typically gathering where lace makers from different associations show the work they've done for the past year and work at the same time. Like, it's really a lace exhibition, but it's so niche, and so we're just, it's open to the public, but we all just together, and it's difficult. Maybe your family come to visit, but it doesn't attract a real public, unfortunately.
Just to also talk about that, there is no place like with Mobilier National, because the atelier workshop, because the workshop where you were in internship is joined with
It's
government.
part of the Mobilier National, but
Yeah.
they are really making lace for art purposes.
Yeah, but
They don't want to do lace for fashion or for anything else than art purposes.
yeah, but maybe they can have places like in event like Révélation in Paris or something like that, because Mobilier National have this place also sometimes.
Maybe, but
That's maybe a part
maybe
of the government
I could ask further. But during my internship, they explained that the pieces they make are supposed to expose like the French gallery of, hey, we mastered this craft. And so the pieces they make are in the French palaces and embassies all around the world to show like, hey, we can do that. And to what they said to me, they are not looking for another prospect than this one.
So my second question was, if with your presentation, if there is some people who make bobbin lacing for a living in France, or is it just for preserving conservation with the government?
Apart from the 8 lace makers of the Mobilier National, I don't know any lace makers living as a professional lace makers, but they are teachers of bobbin lace. But they earn their life by teaching lace, not by selling their lace.
Yeah, but they're teaching to people who make it just for hobbies?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's the whole problem.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So you said that the pattern making creation, when you ask them, it takes about 6 to 7 years to master. Yeah. Is it because there's a lack of explanation? What do you think about that? Can someone start doing the patterns faster, or is it actually that hard to make?
It's actually hard to make, but in my opinion, they are saying like, yeah, you need 7 years of rigorous practice, also to scare a bit of the people, but it's actually taking a long time, because here, for example, you see on the left side, every yarn, every thread is drawn to, in English for me it's difficult, but the number, in most of the bobbin lace pieces, you have the same numbers of thread from the beginning to the top. So every yarn needs to have a place to go within the pattern. And it's difficult regarding the level of details you want to have to not have threads, now I don't know what to do with this one, where should I put it? And then it's in the middle of something. And so it's difficult, but I don't want to believe that it's impossible to master. But that being said, I've been doing bobbin lace for 5 years and I'm still not drawing my design. But I've started taking technical drawing classes a year ago. So maybe I'm not gonna prove right the people say you need 7 years, and maybe with a year I will be able to do it.
Yeah, do it before the 7th year.
Yeah.
Okay, and second question, other than fashion and jewelry, do we see bobbin lace in any other products?
In some countries, it was used for housing embellishment, like tablecloth or curtains of some fabrics that you have in the house. In Czech Republic, for example, there is a big tradition of making tablecloths with bobbin lace.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Firstly, I'm hoping I'm going to ask a question. I left the room for a minute, so I hope I'm not going to repeat it. I grew up with a grandmother that used to have lace, and I'm just astounded how long it's taken for that to be produced. I'm in awe. It seems to me that the biggest problem is the isolation of the people that practice. And in order to elevate your product to a different level, to reach those markets that you actually believe it should be in, surely there must be some form of collaboration that needs to happen at a more local level where, I'm forgive my ignorance, where each part of a certain garment could be separated out and made in some region, and it come together as a collective to reduce that extortionate number of hours down to something that's viable. And that would then not only elevate bobbin making, but also give a sense of empowerment to those people in other regions. I don't know if that's an option, or am I picking up that it's a very secretive, we keep it to ourselves?
Well, that's a beautiful project. I would love for this to happen. But yeah, the thing is, some of, I would say most, but that's not nice. But yeah, some lace makers are really gatekeeping their knowledge, not all of them. And that's also what's happening with technical drawing. Like, it's so difficult. We know how it works. We keep it for ourselves, like it's a secret. And that's actually part of the reason why bobbin lace declines this much. Because when there were bobbin lace workshops in from the 17th to the 19th centuries, they kept every technique secret. So we don't have a lot of sources of how they were doing stuff because they kept it a secret, as they were the only one knowing it. And so now we don't have a lot of archives. And this issue is tending to repeat itself now.
Such a fluid, beautiful presentation. You kind of took us through that. It was like swimming down a river. It was wonderful. Congratulations. This is a really valuable, you are valuable. So
thank you.
I kind of would have a tendency to, you're never going to change the lace skills. These women are in their 70s. They're set in their ways. They're happy doing what they do. But you, look how cool you are. You are a cool lace maker in 2025. And I think that is your superpower, really. So I think that you can connect with these women, but I think you're going to be banging your head against the wall trying to bring them with you. So the solution perhaps would be to collaborate with a fashion designer and make a small range. And in that small range, you've got tiny detailing like the chokers, like the tiny detailing around the top that you've got. And you yourself will make it cool. And then social media, so a younger generation will come through. So I don't think it's one bullet. I don't think it's one answer, but I think it's several different things. And, you know, the invention of the press in the 1600s made these braid patterns available, which then exponentially expanded the lace industry. So once you produce your own lace patterns this is going to take a lifetime, really. So it's not going to take in the next 5 years the fashion industry is going to adopt this, but you'll have small breakthroughs and triumphs along the way. But really, I think that you are the one to lead this, not the wonderful lace guild, because they're very set in their ways, you know.
Well, thank you for everything, really. And actually, yeah, I'm not trying to take all of these elderly women with me because they don't want to, but they teach me a lot. And also they kind of enjoy seeing someone trying to do another thing with bobbin lace. They are not against me like, oh no, don't do bobbin lace for fashion. They're like, we wouldn't do that. We don't think maybe it's the right way, but if you want to do. And I'm in two, like really weekly, I'm in two different groups, and they welcome me really easily when I approach them because they really want to share their knowledge. So as much as I can, I spend time with them, but then I understand I have to make my own path through lace. And I hope if I can only plant some seeds about it, it's already a victory. Yeah, it's not done yet, but it's in the process for my PhD. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add on what you've just said, because I think it's you're very much tapping into the issue that crafts are meeting right now. It's like dealing with the ethical issues of re-employment, reinterpretation, and at the same time excess in giving identities and conservative identities, using conservative identity for crafts. And of course, those issues have been there for a very long time, but we are still dealing with them. And I think the point is very much there. So I think it would be a brilliant issue to discuss further if some of you are up for it.
Another one?
Me again. I'm just wondering regarding the technical drawing that you mentioned in machine lace making. Is it easier to draw them? Like how does it happen? Like, do designers or like fashion houses, for instance, are just like handed a pattern book and then they can pick? Can you like also draw your own and then they can reproduce it? Like,
well, machine-made lace machines are working really differently from bobbin lace because they work with, you can see them with jacquard cards. Yeah. So it's not the same way of drawing a pattern than when you do bobbin lace. But it's weird because the process to draw the pattern is really different, and when you look at the result, Lever's lace look exactly like bobbin lace. And when I was during my internship at Sofialet, in the Sofialet factory, I was like, maybe we can do my pattern if there's time, maybe. And I faced the same closeness from their part. Like they were saying, oh, it takes a long time, you know, and also it's a company, so they have orders and they don't have time to do proper or to do actually just research for fun because I'm here, you know, like they have stuff to do. But they also tend to say that it takes a long time to draw the pattern and then to do the jacquard cards, and that's it. They want no time to do something more. So in fact, the whole lace industry is putting obstacles for themselves, like, oh, we cannot do more. But I'm sure they can.
I have a small question. Is there any small mechanical machine to to lace? Is there printing lace? Does it exist?
I'm kind of vintage, so new technology I'm not super aware of. But there are smaller lace machines. There are some in the Lace Museum in Calais which are round, and they make only ribbon of lace. Maybe that's the one you're talking about. No, okay.
I don't know anything
about printing lace. I know that some designers are doing this, but and it's also cool. But that's not where my research is leading me to, because I really want to do this.